Hello. Just give me one moment. Something moving on the screen. I want to make sure we are live and everything's all good at the technology end. Okay, all right. That seems to be all good now. Okay, so welcome, hello. And as has been my tradition the last so many times, I love to give multiple greetings, all the greetings actually that I know. So you say hello, salam, shalom, sat sri akal, namaste, aloha, and hola. Hey, if you know of any other greetings, please share them with me. But you have to let me hear how you say it, because of course I can read how greetings are written in many languages by just Googling it. But if I don't know how it sounds, see, then I don't want to mess it up. So please, if you have a greeting that you can share with me, share it with me so I can hear you say it, and then I will see if I can do a good job of saying it back accurately. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. So, okay, in case you don't know who I am already, my name is Samia, and I am your happiness expert and author of the book Make Change Fun and Easy: How to Create Inner Peace to World Peace in 3 Simple Steps. So I've been doing these weekly broadcasts, and I've been sharing bite-sized lessons on the theme of my book, and actually going even deeper in the way that I am addressing the issues that I talk about during these broadcasts that have been addressed in the book. And now you're getting a more updated, even wiser, deeper reflection from me, because since I've written this book, I have continued to learn and grow and become even wiser. Good or good? So I have picked a quote, and I have been, over the last few weeks, sort of breaking it down for you because it's full of so much amazing wisdom. I cannot cover it all in one broadcast. So first of all, let me just go ahead and read that quote for today, and then I will tell you what part of it we're going to be focusing on, okay? So the quote is by Prophet Muhammad, and in this quote he says, "Wondrous is the affair of the believer, for there is good for them in every matter, and this is not the case with anyone except the believer. If they are happy, then they thank God, and thus there is good for them. And if they are harmed, then they show patience, and thus there is good for them." Okay, so the part we are going to talk about today is, and if they are harmed, then they show patience, and thus there is good for them. And we'll actually also end up talking a little bit more about the idea of who this believer is, for whom the state of affairs is so wondrous. What do they actually believe? Now, if you actually have been following all the broadcasts in this series, you will see that I've already talked a little bit about this idea of what do you actually believe, in order to help you have this mindset that allows you to find good for yourself in every matter. So what are the beliefs that inform that mindset? So we're going to talk about that also a little bit more today. Okay, and then I'll probably end up doing another broadcast where I just more exclusively talk about this idea of who the believer is, what they actually believe, and why this quote or this teaching by the Prophet Muhammad, why he insists that this wondrous state of affairs is only possible or true for the believer, where there is good for them in every matter. But okay, so we'll talk more about that next time. So back to this broadcast point of focus, which is to think about, and if they are harmed, then they show patience, and thus there is good for them. So when you think about being harmed, and you think about what are the possible responses that you can have in that situation, patience certainly is an idea that is very likely to come up, right? It's like, okay, I've been harmed, I'm struggling with something, I'm dealing with some kind of adversity in my life, I have to be patient. But the question that I really want, but I know for the longest time, for me, when I thought about being patient, it was about just sort of gritting my teeth and just tolerating the situation and, just doing the best I could to survive through it, get through it. So I was, in other words, also, wanting for it to end, waiting for the situation to pass. I didn't want to be in that situation. I didn't think actually that there was anything good in that situation. I thought it was a bad situation. And I just wanted to be able to get through it. And there was definitely this sense of stress and tension that I experienced in my mind and heart as I attempted to practice patience in the face of that difficulty or in the face of that adversity. And honestly, that's how I saw most people in my life practicing patience. In fact, I would even say maybe all the people I saw in my life, until very recently, I started noticing that there is a different way we can be patient. And I think that different way of being patient is actually what this saying is talking about. Ooh, by the way, I noticed MJ Peace is watching. Hi, thank you for joining. Let me see if there's a way I'm doing this on my phone, so I hope I'll be able to see if you make any comments, but right now I only see your name. So if I miss your comments because I'm on the phone and I don't know how to navigate this app very well, please don't mind. I'll be sure to check for comments after I'm done and I will respond to them. So everyone is welcome. Even if you're watching this after I'm done with the live part of this podcast, you're welcome to leave your questions or comments or reactions under in the comments under the video once it's posted. So, all right, okay. So back to the idea of there's a different way of being patient, and this different way is an even better way of being patient, right? Because, okay, so think about it like this. In this quotation, we're talking about a state of affairs where there's good for me in every matter, okay? We're talking about this being the case for the believer. Okay, so now I'm going to say a little bit about the believer and what the believer believes. I think one of the things that this believer that's being referred to in this quote actually believes in this idea that there is good for them in every matter. This believer that's being referred to in this quote has deep trust and faith in this idea that there is good for them in every matter. Earlier, in one of my earlier broadcasts, I shared the quote by John Adams, I think it was, that every problem is an opportunity in disguise. And I think that's the perspective that this believer takes, the believer that's being referred to in this quote, that in every problem there is an opportunity. And so what's the opportunity that we have when we are feeling harmed or thinking we have been harmed or experiencing some kind of harm in our life? Well, according to this saying, the opportunity is the opportunity to practice patience. But what's so great about the opportunity to practice patience? If all it is we're gritting our teeth and just tolerating our way through the situation, what's so great about that? See, I don't think that's so great. I certainly didn't feel great, going through that kind of situation. So it's okay, so if I'm not practicing patience in that way, and that is not the true opportunity, then what is the true opportunity in the practice of patience? So I think this is where another teaching in Islam comes in very handy to help us better understand how we can better practice patience. And so this is actually a notion that is both present in the Quran. It's a teaching that's present in the Quran, and it's also something that we know the Prophet Muhammad practiced in his life and taught other Muslims, all Muslims, to practice. And that is this teaching that whenever you find yourself facing difficulty, facing any kind of adversity, that you seek refuge in God. Seek refuge in God. And there's actually an Arabic phrase that pretty much all Muslims have memorized in Arabic, and it literally translates to, I seek refuge in God, right? It's A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So the extended version of it is, I seek refuge in God from the Satan the accursed. So right now, let's focus on the idea of seeking refuge in God, and what does that really mean, and how is that, why are we taught to seek refuge in God as one of the first responses that we make to facing hardship or feeling like we're in trouble or in difficulty? So I actually looked up the definition of refuge, just in the dictionary on Google. What does refuge mean, And so refuge is defined as a condition of being safe or sheltered from pursuit, danger, or trouble. So refuge is a condition of being safe or sheltered from pursuit, danger, or trouble. It's a condition of being safe or sheltered. So what we are doing by seeking refuge in God, what we are actually doing is we're seeking safety. We're seeking shelter from danger, trouble, pursuit, whatever is bothering us or hurting us. And that makes sense. It's like, okay, I'm in trouble. I want shelter. I want safety, right? So that's a very logical response to feeling that you are being harmed or in some kind of trouble. Now, interestingly, when you think about the believer, though, again, right, and what the believer believes, so again, as a Muslim, not only have I been taught to believe by this quote that I've been sharing with you and other teachings in the teachings of Islam, not only have I been taught to believe that there's good for me in every matter, but I've also been taught to believe that God loves me. God takes care of me. God is ever present in my life. And in fact, there's a beautiful verse in the Quran that talks about how God is closer to me than my jugular vein. And that is always true. That is always the case. There is never a time when God abandons me or just leaves me to my own devices, leaves me by myself to deal with things on my own. No, never. That never, ever happens. God is ever present and is always loving, always merciful, always compassionate towards me. Okay, so if all of that is true, if I truly believe that, then the moment that I seek refuge in God, I'm actually reminded that I'm already in refuge with God. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it's like here I am seeking refuge in God, and that reminds me I'm already in God's refuge. I'm already in God's refuge because God never abandons me. God never goes away. God is always there to help me, love me, protect me. And He's doing so even now, even in this moment. And so now when I remember that I am already in God's refuge, remember, refuge is a condition of being safe and sheltered from all danger and trouble, right? So I'm now realizing that I am already safe. I'm already sheltered. What a relief, right? Yes. So as soon as I seek shelter in God, and then I realize that I already am in the shelter that I'm seeking, then I'm able to relax. Whew. And that is, the great opportunity, because when you are able to relax in this knowing that you're completely safe and loved and, in God's refuge, so it has so many benefits. Number one, immediately fills my heart with gratitude, right? And last broadcast that I did, we talked about how when our heart fills with gratitude, especially when it fills with gratitude towards God, that our relationship with God actually deepens and becomes even more loving. We grow to love God even more. Because it's just, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm being loved right now. God is taking care of me right now. And through that care, through that sheltering that God is giving me in this moment, the refuge that God is giving me in this moment, that's actually God loving me, right? And so when you realize that, when you recognize that, it increases your sense of love for God and your appreciation of God, and you become even more grateful for all the amazing blessings that God has given you in your life. And so right there, that's a huge benefit of of practicing patience when you feel you have been harmed. But there's more. So another really great, amazing benefit of being able to just relax in this moment of, like in the situation of feeling challenged or harmed, but being able to now relax in this, knowing that you are safe, you're taken care of, you're loved. You can now shift your focus to thinking about the opportunity that's in this problem, right? Remember, every problem is an opportunity in disguise, right? So if while you're still worried about the problem, it's very difficult to see the opportunity. But once you're feeling relaxed and safe in refuge, because you're in refuge already, then you can very easily shift your focus to thinking about, where is the opportunity, right? Where is the opportunity? What are the solutions? What are the next steps that I can take to help resolve the situation? And the thing is that you also realize and recognize in that moment that you don't have to figure all this out by yourself. You're in God's refuge. He's there to love you, take care of you, guide you. So there's no reason to be stressing or freaking out or anything. You can just relax and be focused on the opportunity, the solutions, the bright side, so to speak, of whatever the situation you're in is. And how amazing is that, right? And so you begin to see, again, why the Prophet Muhammad said, wondrous is the affair of the believer, for there is good for them in every matter. If they're happy, they thank God, and thus there is good for them. And if they're harmed, they show patience, and thus there is good for them. I just love it. Okay, so that was the main point I wanted to make from the perspective of what Muslims believe and what Muslims think and so forth. But I also want to just take a little bit of time now and talk to you about this idea from a different perspective. So in case you're not a Muslim, or you just don't share the same beliefs or concept of God that I have or that I believe in, that's cool. You can still learn from this and really allow this to inspire you and benefit you. So how can you look at this in a different perspective that's not so Muslim and Islam specific? So this reminds me of a quote by Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein, he said, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. Okay? Because the thing is that our beliefs have a causal direct impact on our thoughts, which have a direct causal impact on our feelings, which have a direct causal impact on our behaviors, which has a direct causal impact on the results and the circumstances that emerge in our life. And this has been proven over and over again, through research in positive psychology, among other disciplines. This causal chain or this causal link between our beliefs, thoughts, feelings, actions, and the results that emerge in our life. And this is actually a really, really key and important idea. So I will just tell you again what this causal chain is. So it goes from beliefs, lead to your thoughts, lead to your feelings, lead to your actions, which are directly causing, in part, not in whole, but in part, the results that you see in your life. Okay? So if you want to change the results in your life, you need to think about how you can change your behavior, your feeling, your thoughts, and your beliefs in a way that would support the different results that you want to see in your life, right? And so if you want to make change fun and easy, which is, I assume, something that you want. That's why you're watching this broadcast now. That's why you're interested in, what I'm talking about. Make change fun and easy. How to stay calm in the face of adversity, right? Calm and relaxed in the face of adversity. So you're definitely interested in this, right? So what beliefs must you have to actually support this outcome of being able to stay calm and relaxed in the face of adversity, and in creating this outcome of being able to experience making change as fun and easy? What beliefs support that? Well, I'll tell you, if you believe that this universe is a hostile place, that belief does not support making change fun and easy. It just doesn't. And it doesn't support being able to stay calm and relaxed in the face of adversity either. So if you are to have any chance at all of being able to experience change as fun and easy, or being able to stay calm and relaxed in the face of adversity, you must realize, recognize, and believe that we live in a friendly universe. So if you believe in a loving, kind God like I do, who not only loves me theoretically but is actually actively present in this loving way in my life, like for me, that belief also allows me to believe that yes, of course, I live in a friendly universe. But if you don't believe in that kind of a God, or in God, in that way, then what evidence can you find that you live in a friendly universe? Well, there's a lot of different evidences, I'm sure, that you could find if you really look for them. So I want to encourage you to find as many different bits of evidence as you can find that helps support the belief for you that you do live in a friendly universe. I will just give you one example of an evidence that I found for myself. This was like decades ago, when I was still a teenager. And yes, I was a teenager decades ago. You might be like, what? A lot of people think I'm like maybe in my early 20s or something. And so how could it be decades ago that I was a teenager? Well, I'm 39 years old, so it's been at least like 2 decades, more than 2 decades since I was a teenager. But anyway, the point is, let's not digress. The point is, when I was a teenager, I was in a very different place in my life. I was actually very, very traumatized. I was, in the process of healing from the trauma of having experienced child sexual abuse. I mean, that healing process is in some ways, of course, never ending, always ongoing. But in my teenage years, I was not peaceful at all. I was very much suffering, still very much in the victim stage and trying to emerge from being the victim of child sexual abuse, And so I will say that my faith in God in those years was not as deep as it is now. I did not experience God as a ever-loving presence in my life at that time. Just because I was so unhappy, I was so traumatized, I was suffering so much, So to think about God in that way, it was like a wish, a dream. I wish I could experience God like that. I wish I could experience that kind of love, but that wasn't my reality at that time, So I had to find other things to give me comfort and to give me hope in my life. And one of the very first things that I found that gave me comfort and hope was reading books. And I was a young person, a teenager. I wasn't reading books of deep philosophy or anything like that. I wasn't that enlightened or that smart. I was reading novels, young adult novels, and trying to learn from the characters in the books that I was reading. And one day I happened, now I see it as a blessing from God. God put this book before me. I picked it up. It was the Diary of Annie Frank. So it was one of the very first nonfiction books I ever read, or that I remember ever reading. And it happened to be the Diary of Annie Frank. If you're not familiar with who Annie Frank is, Annie Frank was a teenager, a Jewish girl who was living during the era of the Second World War. And because she was a Jew, of course, her family was being targeted by the Nazis. They were in Germany at the time. And in order to escape being caught and, thrown into concentration camps and so forth, her family had to go into hiding in this little attic in a building, that one of their friends gave them refuge in, and they were stuck there. I can't remember exactly how long, but I think it was maybe a couple of years or something like that, at least. Sorry, I forget the details. I read this when I was, like I said, a teenager decades ago. But those details are not important anyway. The point is what's the learning, in this situation that gave me hope and gave me comfort. And so you can imagine, being in Annie's situation, where your family is literally being hunted and other people in your community have been caught and killed and tortured. And, you have to live with that constant fear of, well, what if we get caught and we might get caught any day, any moment. Anything can happen. You can't, you're stuck in this like attic, and you can't leave, you know, not even for for a little while. You can imagine, especially for a young teenager, how traumatic that would be, you know. And it was very difficult for Annie. So, you know, she writes in her diaries about the many challenges that she had to face in that situation. But she writes about so much more than that, you know. Even in that situation, she finds reasons to be happy, reasons to be hopeful, you know, to you know, like, she manages to find love and peace, you know, in her life and in her heart. And even though the challenge that Annie was going through was so different from the challenge, the trauma that I was experiencing, but nonetheless, you know, there was you know, something that really touched me about her story. The fact that she was so close to my own age at that time. The fact that, you know, she was also suffering. I mean, had to suffer so much, like so much difficulty in her life. But she still managed to find hope and peace and joy and love, you know, in her life, stuck in that attic. That gave me hope, you know, that hey, if Annie could go through the hardship, the trauma, the adversity that she went through and find hope and love and peace and all that good stuff, then maybe I could too, you know. And then that inspired me to find other biographies. I searched for other books, other biographies, like real life people. Like, you know, it's one thing to read a fictional book, right, where the characters are fictional and you can sort of at one level, you know, learn from them and be inspired by them, but there's a part of your mind that might still be like inclined to say, oh, they're not real people, they're these characters in a book, so of course, you know, they managed to solve whatever problem it was. And but that's not something that I can do. I'm not like this character, you know. But Annie was real. She was a real girl, you know. And so I was like, you know, let me see, like, find other people that I could learn from, real people who have been through difficult experiences, who have been through traumas as bad or even worse than what I have experienced. And let me see if I can learn something from them about how they helped themselves heal, how they found hope and peace and so forth in their lives. And sure enough, you know, once I began to look for those examples, those stories, those people that you know, that could inspire and teach me in that way, I started to find them everywhere, you know, in my life, and in so many more books that I started to find. And so, you know, this is just one example of how you can find evidence in your life that we do live in a friendly universe, you know, because and what's the evidence over here? More specifically, it's our capacity to heal. You know, that we live in a universe where we humans have such an amazing capacity to heal from such deep traumas. I mean, think about, you know, like people who have experienced rape, who have experienced other forms of abuse, who have lived through wars, you know, experienced torture, who have experienced starvation, who have experience severe debilitating illness, sickness, disease, all kinds of things. And no matter what kind of scenario, situation, adversity you can think of, if you look, if you really look, you will find people who have been able to overcome those adversities, who have been able to heal from those traumas, and been able to grow, into even better people, not despite having faced the adversity or the trauma that they did, but because they faced the adversity or the trauma that they did. And that's certainly very true in my case also. I today live a life of immense peace in my life. I, actually, when I was going through my happiness expert training, what did I mention? I'm a happiness expert. That's right, I am. That's what got me into this work that I do now, coaching, training, healing people around issues of, how to be happy, how to make change fun and easy. So I wouldn't have gotten into this happiness expert work. I wouldn't have, dedicated so many years, literally decades of my life to figuring out how I can cultivate inner peace and happiness, how I can eliminate suffering from my life. Most people my age, they have very different priorities in their lives. They're thinking about very different things. They have very different goals. But because of the trauma that I experienced, the abuse that I experienced, because of how it impacted me in terms of creating this sense of great suffering in my life that I couldn't bear, I was like motivated. My whole life direction shifted, and I became obsessed almost. No, actually, in some ways, I was obsessed. I was like, I have to figure this out. I have to figure out how I can stop suffering. I have to figure out how I can, regain my peace and happiness, and so because I became focused on learning about this and achieving this goal for myself, that I was actually able to achieve it, and to a point where not only have I now achieved it for myself, but now I'm actually able to help other people who are suffering, who have experienced trauma in their lives. I'm able to help them, find healing and growth, in happiness and inner peace in their lives. And that gives me even more joy in my life, So I am not happier in the trauma that I experienced. I am this way because of the trauma that I experienced. I'm almost done, and I have to take a moment to plug my phone in because it's about to die. So yeah, that's the main lesson actually that I wanted to share. That it's not yeah that's it. That's the main lesson. And if you're having a hard time finding those evidences, or if you're still in the process of finding those evidences that this is in fact a friendly universe, in the meantime, what can you do, right? While you really develop a deep belief in that you are in a friendly universe. In the meantime, just remind yourself, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. That was another mantra that I learned, that I found immensely helpful in my life when I'm finding it difficult to be patient in this more better way of the believer who realizes and recognizes that they're already in refuge, in God's refuge. So while I'm struggling to recognize that, I can nonetheless still, at the very least, remind myself that this too shall pass. This too shall pass, right? And that gives me hope, and that gives me strength. All right, so I think we have been, I don't know how long we have been going, but thank you for staying all this time with me. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please share them. If you found this helpful to yourself, please like and share this video with your friends on whatever platform you happen to be watching it on. And I will see you next week. And in the meantime, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, and hola.